So, we all know what the backrooms are like. Stink of moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, and the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz. I decided to build the backrooms in Unreal. And honestly, you might be thinking, who cares? There's already a dozen backroom games out there. Why should I care about yours? And to that I say, I don't know. Before we start building level 0, we need to lay out the walls. Usually, most others tend to rely on hand building the whole thing, or make small sections and randomly assemble them. But me, my smooth brain, and all of its wisdom, decided it would be a great idea to build a 100% procedural wall generator. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. I actually had a prototype built in Unity, so I had to translate all the Unity code into Unreal Spaghetti. For people who care about how it works, it's essentially a 2D texture where I draw lines to check for overlap, and if there's none, then I just spawn a game object. It took some tinkering since they are different engines, but I finished and came across a pretty huge problem. Can you see it? Or I guess feel it? The problem is that Unreal, checking a pixel on a 2D texture takes a lot of processing power, which slows the whole thing down. So I had to change how I check for walls and just figured to use raycasts instead. For those who don't know, it just casts a ray, so, raycast. And so if the raycast doesn't hit anything, it just spawns a normal wall, and if it does hit something, then it spawns in a shorter one, which also appears in the original image. So that's essentially my wall generator. But we can't have a backroom game without the textures. Currently, as of this video, my game has 3 wall textures. The first one's synonymous with the backrooms, and that is the one with the up arrows. I built this by overlapping a triangle texture I drew, and a line texture with a cylinder repeating in the middle. There's also a faint random noise to roughen up the wall. It also plugged in a world space UV instead of an object UV, so that I could have different wall objects blend seamlessly to one another. The second texture is the dots. It is just dots. The third and last texture is the lines. These textures are rather easy to identify in the image, but one thing I noticed is this wall next to the lines. It's really blurry, and some might think it's the up arrow texture, but after putting it through similar compression, it doesn't look like it. I think it's similar to this wall texture I found on Reddit. I'll probably add this later, but for now we got enough textures. The wall also comes with floor trims and electrical outlets, similarly to the original image. Now that we got the madness of mono yellow out of the way, I need to add the stink of moist carpet. Getting a good looking carpet was rather difficult, but it was worth it. I actually made a carpet material before in Unity, and this was it. This time around I watched this rug video on YouTube. I followed it step by step and voila, carpet. The thing is, in that video it is intended for small stuff where repetition isn't visible, and it's rather obvious when you use it like I do. So what I did was plugging it into a texture variation node, and it pretty much scrambles the texture. While this looks messier than the original image, it looks good, and I'm happy with it. I guess the last thing to make is a ceiling. It's pretty simple. I made a grid texture and stuck it over dense noise to simulate the look of old office ceiling tiles. I wanted to add stains to it, but I couldn't figure out a good way to make it look good, so I kinda just gave up on it. And also added the fluorescent lights. The fluorescent lights are literally 4 glowing tubes. Unreal Engine is the only game engine right now that can do this, and it's thanks to Lumen. Normally, you would need a light emitter of sort, like directional light for outside sunlight, or spotlight for flashlights, but because how Lumen's made, I'm able to just crank up the emission of the material and use it as emitter. This does have some drawbacks. The shadows are not crisp, and the render distance is much smaller than if you would just use an actual emitter. There's also some weird things going on with the positioning of the lights. It seems that depending on its placement, it sometimes decides to just not work. It's not that big of a deal compared to what I would have had to work with if I didn't do it like this, so I don't mind. But yeah, that's all my backroom game has to offer for now. If you want more insight into the whole process of building the backrooms and my previous projects with Unity, then watch my other video. So yeah, goodbye.